How are we all? Thank you for the $2, Naomi Chance. The shadow government sends you their best. Apparently not. I see at least 2 people here complaining about my tardiness. If I were in charge, they'd have been disposed of much more efficiently. Oh, you're reading Richard Rorty. Very, very nice. What are you reading? I'm going to try really hard to hold together the stream, guys. The pollen is unreal today. Like, I feel like I'm suffocating. We're going to make it through this segment. I don't know how far we're going to get beyond that. But, oh my god. It's rough. We're going to go through one thing today. It's going to take a little bit of time, because it's long. But it's a thing in the title. You'll be happy to know. For a change. And then probably tomorrow we'll do one of our longer streams. So we've got a couple things to go through. Among other things, let me see if I get this right. Texas A&M suspended a professor accused of criticizing the governor. Jesus Christ. Bad stuff. We're also going to be going over the new Florida curriculum. The slavery apologia Florida curriculum. And you all know I love going over curriculums. That'll be fun. need to buy President Sunday a bubble. Yes, you do. I will stream every single day for 9 hours if I have a bubble. If I was able to breathe, oh my god, I'd be a monster. But yeah. One of my patrons asked for a list of political science books, and I already have a reading list. Actually, I've got 2 copies of that reading list on the channel already. But I'm going to make one of recent stuff that I've read, and I think that's a fair compromise. That way it's not redundant, but you're also getting stuff that I either gained more appreciation for later on, or discovered more recently. So that'll be interesting, hopefully. Contingency, Irony, and Solidarity, the one with the worst looking cover in the history of bad book covers. Let me know how that is. The only ones I've read about 50% of Mirror of Nature, Philosophy in the Mirror of Nature, and I've read most of Pragmatism as Anti-Authoritarianism, which is both very interesting and I have a mountain of critiques for. Anyhow, let's get this set up. Oh. Bless you, DemonMama. You timestamped your videos. I love it when people do that. Alright. We're going to go small for this one. Where are you? Come on. There we go. Okay. So this is DemonMama talking with RyanBeard. She's been doing a bit of bridge building with that whole crew recently. She had a good conversation with Soul Bunny. I'm going to be honest, I was in the chat for the Soul Bunny conversation, and I was livid, as a lot of you were. But on reflection, during that call, as a matter of fact, I talked to DemonMama afterwards. It was the wise move. Because there's one of two things. You're capable of doing one of two things as a creator in this position, in DemonMama's position. Here, I'll make myself big while I'm just talking. You can have a show trial. You can make them feel really, really bad and make them look really, really small in front of people that already hate them, and that can be very satisfying. And maybe it can even be really great content for you, and it can make you a bunch of bucks, and maybe will open up a lot of doors to people who want to talk to you because it was fun to watch you beat up this nasty little person. Or you can treat them like a human being, make a couple screw-ups because that happens when you're generous, and open up an avenue for further discussion. Not a blank check to just let anything go, but, you know, like, if you're in a situation where you have growing factions, I guess, just sort of falling in tribally, that's the only way to do it. Somebody has to let something give, and it seems to me that the cost of DemonMama doing this is relatively low, and if, you know, if they go back on it in the end, and the kindness is repaid with treasury, well, so much the worse for them. That only looks bad on them. And the situation is the same either way. But this conversation with RyanBeard, I think, went very well, judging from the little bits of it that I've seen. RyanBeard is an interesting case here, more so than Soul Bunny, who's a very small channel. For RyanBeard to meet you halfway like this comes with risks. So RyanBeard making even slight concessions, even if not acknowledging maybe wrongdoing or unfairness or whatever, that's a positive move. And once again, the question is, do you torch them? Do you go the show trial route? Or do you bite your tongue a little bit and make things better for everybody? And I think that's what DemonMama is trying to do. I think she's done so in a very intelligent way so far. Not perfect, but I think she's done a magnificent job considering. And we'll see. My inclination as somebody who's gone extremely hard on RyanBeard is that if Ryan's willing to meet us halfway and is willing to kind of like arrest the escalation, I'm down to play ball. At least for as long as you can. So we'll see how this goes. Who is RyanBeard? RyanBeard is a very strange person. That's all you need to know. Big audience though. Anywho. Small again. There we go. Hello.
Hello, let me make sure that I've closed down.
Hello, hello, hello. That's
Awesome.
very quiet. Let's turn this up a little bit.
Hearing two things at once. What's up? Is this working?
Yeah, it is, actually. Let me just, real quick, I gotta change my text here. And real quick, can I just ask you your pronouns?
My pronouns are any. You can call me whatever the fuck
based.
you want.
That's triggering.
Yeah.
All right, cool. Based. All right, and 1 second. Let me just get the Discord up here and working real quick.
Is it just me or is this very quiet?
All right, here we go.
Chat, can you hear this? Is the audio okay? This is very quiet.
Perfect. All right, we can see your camera on stream. And
Awesome.
real quick, I just wanted to test your audio. Can I get a quick, like a test from you real quick?
Test.
All right.
Yeah, that is very quiet. Let's boost that a little bit more.
And that should do it. All right.
Okay.
Perfect. Well, Ryan, welcome to the show. Thank you so very much for coming on. Please introduce yourself, shout out your channel, let everybody know what you're all about, because there's probably a bunch of people here who aren't familiar with you, even though I'm sure some are.
Sure, yeah, thanks for having me on.
Absolutely.
I would say I'm a commentary YouTuber. I would say I fall into like that general sphere. I am a leftist, so I definitely like dabble my toe in talking about like leftist topics, but I wouldn't consider myself like a leftist political creator necessarily.
Okay.
Especially recently, I've been trying to like shift back my content more towards like focusing on comedy and music and stuff like that, because I feel like that's really where I shine as a creator, not as much like giving super in-depth political takes, because I'm honestly not like incredibly educated about like leftist theory and whatnot. But
that's fair. A lot of people aren't. It's still especially, I don't know, especially in the English-speaking world, the leftist theory is not commonly taught. It's not something that people like naturally come into contact with most of the time. So that makes sense.
I wish it was. I wish that in history class you'd get a more honest representation of leftist theory, but obviously that's not going to happen. So. Me
too. I feel like American history classes can't even handle like a basic truth about history, about our own history, let alone like being able to.
God, why is the volume so low on this? DemonMama, what's going on? I think it might be my computer. Actually, it was not this quiet last night. Unless it was.
Introduce people to other political lines of thought. Yeah.
And then Donald Trump is like, "Oh, it's too far woke. You know, we need to make it even more dishonest." So,
yeah, we need to be the only thing that you actually learn is every history class is just another retelling of like George Washington chopping down the cherry tree and then being like, "Oh, mommy, I'm sorry, I lied." That sort of thing.
And then the first Thanksgiving dinner where they're all hugging each other. That's,
yeah, exactly. And it's like, ooh, the turkey's great this year, isn't it? And everybody just does a little song. Yeah, that's all you're gonna get. Yeah, unfortunately.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I mean, I am very happy that Comrade Joe Biden eliminated the possibility of the 1776 project ever coming around. To be fair, I think basically Comrade anybody would have been able to pull off that one. That was a pretty. Donald Trump's history rewriting project was ridiculous. Yeah. Well, anyway, thank you.
Where am I supposed
so
to
much
put
for
this?
coming on.
There's
Thank
nowhere
you
to
so
put
much for
this.
shouting
Damn it.
yourself out and
Down here. Okay.
Introducing yourself to everybody. So what you had initially wanted to, at least that we talked about prior, was talking about sort of the bloody state of the online left, and that is something that I have talked about a lot recently, but a lot generally. I've been in the much more explicitly political spaces since I basically started my channel. When I first started my channel was like almost exclusively politics. I did debates. I was a debate sis, a debate bro streamer, whatever you want to call it. That kind of thing. Was like my jam, and then over time I was like, I'm kind of done with this. I'm done with the debate stuff. I felt like the actual debate content was getting really toxic as far as like how they're set up and whatnot. And so
especially in like the Twitch poll space a couple years ago, I feel like it was even more toxic.
Yeah, it started with it was interesting because there are some I feel like there are trends that happened within the Twitch poll space that are reflected at the like lefty politics writ large. Like I think that there's a lot of parallels there, where there started with a lot of people with generally amicable relations and the ability to sit down and have conversations about important topics, and then it just over time kept giving in to the like sort of lowest drama urges. Not that there wasn't always some level of drama. Obviously, there was like, I mean, I even was like, you know, I was excited to bring spice. I would get pretty intense in the debates, although I tried to keep it to the debate and not carry it beyond and like hate people. You know, I was just like, I'm going to be intense in this debate. I'm not going to mince words. But anyway, yeah, the Twitch poll is like actually gone. Like there's nothing left of it. Even Twitch doesn't even have a politics section anymore, which is wild. I mean, I guess it might actually. I'm pretty sure they rolled it into just chatting, which is weird.
Why do you think that is? Was Twitch like cracking down on having like spicy conversations or things like that, or?
Yeah, for sure. There was a lot of stuff you used to be able to talk about and do on Twitch that they've actually made like explicit rulings on. Like, I mean, one of them is just like their slur policy, which seems fairly like, oh, what? Like you can't even refer to slurs in like a analytical sense anymore.
Educational.
Yeah, so like I would, you know, I couldn't do a segment talking about like the F slur or the T slur and its historical usage, even as a trans person and a gay person. Like, so that was one thing. But of course,
didn't Hassan get temporarily banned for saying cracker or something?
Yes, that also happened. That was I had a funny stream when that happened. That was after I had already switched over to YouTube because I'm a YouTube streamer now. But I started on Twitch, and and the other thing too was another one that started happening was this one actually was more impactful than the slur policy because obviously, you know, talking about slurs in an analytical context is pretty niche. It's not going to happen all that often, even though it kind of sucks to not be able to talk about it, frankly, to have to dance around it. What really hurt it was they made a ruling that you can't watch footage that contains hateful content or hate symbols or hate language, even to oppose it, which basically means, I mean, you couldn't talk about parts of January 6th, for example, without risk of your channel. So it had this freezing effect of basically, okay, so we can't. An example of this would be, you know, I don't know if you've heard about. I'm going to talk about this later in the show. I don't know if you heard about Ron DeSantis's campaign and that they ran an ad that had a black sun in it, and and you can't play that to talk about it on.
I think a major thing too is a lot of people were switching over to YouTube, not even just because topics were verboten, but because they have this ridiculous policy. It's not even a matter of covering hate material. If you cover people who have been banned, if a person who has been banned crosses your screen, they will suspend your account, which is insane. It's insane. First of all, like there's not like an easy go-to list of all the people who are banned. Secondly, what the hell? Like that's ridiculously controlling for no reason.
On Twitch without running a genuine risk of your channel being hit. So it just had this freezing effect. Over time, there were more and more changes that just seemed to be pushing people away from politics as a platform. I mean, they explicitly said, I don't remember who it was, I couldn't give you an exact quote, but one of their sort of like community leadership was just like, yeah, we want Twitch to focus on gaming more than other stuff. And so that just kind of, for a lot of people, was like, okay, this is clearly not.
Does YouTube's copyright system also have chilling effects though? Yes, but not nearly as bad. YouTube's copyright system creates a chilling effect largely on coverage of like mainstream news sources or coverage of media. Like media criticism typically has to either use only still images from the thing. It's very difficult, for example, to like go over you can't do a scene dissection of a movie, for example. Music is like a little bit of music happens very briefly. Oh, now all of a sudden some studio's pulling all of your ad revenue. It doesn't prevent you from outright discussing certain topics or talking to certain people. But it does have a chilling effect. So, for example, almost every single video on my channel that touches trans issues at all, no matter how PG, I could not swear for the entire thing. Literally nothing sexual is talked about. Just the bare fact of trans issues being discussed. Maybe even that word is itself has to trigger it. All of them are unlimited monetization. Every single one. It's like automatic. And it's ridiculous. It's actually ridiculous. So there's a monetary incentive to not talk about certain things, but your channel is not being arbitrarily taken down. That's a big difference between Twitch and YouTube.
There's not gonna
They
be
don't care
any
about
like
us.
yeah, it's hostility to that. And the actual politics space itself, the people who were active in the politics.
Tequila Sunset says, Vosh engaging with the space less often and Destiny getting banned seem to be some of the biggest effects that killed Twitch poll, I think Vosh, I disagree to a certain extent. Vosh disengaging and Destiny getting banned, that had more of an impact on the debate sphere and on people using confrontations between these right and left clusters within Twitch poll, from getting into these big collaborative things. Even if they were contentious, they were collaborations, like the hippy dippy thing, which of course like that also shut down. I think that hurt it on that front, but you still had people doing political content solo, like lots of it. I think what really killed it was just the inability to actually address the opposition. You couldn't fight the right wing on Twitch because you were registered as identical to them, and of course if you're right wing you can't go on Twitch at all. So, or more or less. Although in a really gross kind of way. So you can actually be super offensive and hostile towards entire groups of people. They're just like, oh, you can't have X, Y, and Z key figures on your screen. You can't say these words, but otherwise, world's your oyster. It's really gross.
Tag, the people who were sort of networking in that sort of space, it got super bloody, like so bloody. It's hard to even there are comparisons to now.
Sunday's looking healthy. Watch Gym Rat in 6 months. I see the muscles. Actually, this is the perverse thing. So my strategy, because I sit down a lot for this, so I'm trying to get outside more and walk around more and just keep things circulating and get in better shape, because I have I've let myself go a tiny bit over the last couple of months, largely due to stress. But my strategy was stupid. Instead of doing cardio and jogging and using an elliptical or using the exercise bike, I was just doing strength training. So my upper body is really nice and all this is rock hard, but nothing's getting thinner and all of my clothes still don't fit. So fuck. Oh, there goes my monetization. See, there you go. There's a chilling effect.
But I feel like it was just so much worse. It got so bad. And then so nobody was working with each other. The content was drying up. It was becoming increasingly insular, and there was just so much bad blood that the tag started to die, and people were just doing other things. Go ahead, please. Sorry.
Yeah, sorry. So, something that I've noticed that is kind of interesting is as I've watched political creators over the years, it does feel like there's always this
it's diet too. My diet's not bad. The problem though is I had a massive stress episode this year, much earlier in the year, and as a consequence of that, there was a brief period where I was really unhealthy, and I'm doing a lot better now. But my diet's more or less stayed stable. The problem though is that how I metabolize seems to have changed, so that's what I'm kind of fighting with. But I actually don't eat very much.
Inevitable, something goes wrong and the bridge gets burned between this creator and that creator and some massive thing blows up, and I feel like I haven't noticed that happen as much in the commentary community, which I consider myself more on the commentary side. I would consider myself I'm really good friends with Nick is Not Green. I don't know if you've heard of him before.
I'm loosely familiar to Nick.
Never heard of that one.
For Nick is Not Green, or with Nick is Not Green. Yeah.
Yeah, Nick is Not Green, Ethan is Online. These are more commentary type people, but we are leftists as well. But I've just noticed that I just feel there hasn't been as much drama and infighting. Like, obviously, an occasional drama will pop up where, we'll talk about, oh, this person had like a bad take or something. But I feel like, why do you think it is that the political space is so, I mean, maybe it is just the nature of politics that makes it so much more rife with like people burning bridges and feeling like they have to attack each other. And I just to be clear, coming into this conversation, I don't want to act like I'm up on some high horse. I definitely have engaged in the infighting. I try to engage in a way that I'm like, okay, maybe I can come at this from like a constructive angle, but if I don't always.
You don't look chubby someday. I'm ripped from the sternum up, and then I've got a gut going, so I need to get that down.
Hit the mark with that necessarily.
Yeah, you did.
So.
You would find it funny,
and
wouldn't you?
Just for the record, I'm not like super interested
Squats
in
are
like,
your
hashing
friends?
out any specific
squats. I should do squats. Yes. Okay. I'll take your
or
little nonverbal
beefs or
response there
anything like
for
that. I'm
a
more
yes.
interested in like, and maybe you're in a different direction. That's fine. We can work that out. But at least for me, I'm more interested in having just a general discussion about the space and the trends in the space, and at least that's for me. But so why do I think that the politics space struggles with this so much? I mean, there's a couple of reasons. I think first off, I think that like politics generally has this issue of intrinsically people perceiving it as more important than it is, or not just more important than it is, but important in a different way is a better way that I should say it. People think that like every single action that's taken in a political space is like immediately impacting the future of the world to a good or bad place.
Bastard.
And as a result, this leads to like there's so many downstream effects of this. I mean, some people lean into that, really
was the
hard.
bad move.
There are creators who basically sell themselves as the avatar of a revolution. Like, and I mean that. Like, there are people who will explicitly say, like, I'm out here, we're challenging the system as it is, and we're bringing. I mean, you see this on the right, but you also see this on the left with people who basically sell themselves as like, I am a political movement. I am going to bring you the future that will make you feel happy, and this sort of messianic quality is one
kind of like setting yourself up as an ideologue, and like if people don't step in line with exactly what you're saying, then they're an enemy to your movement or something.
Yeah, I think that's part of it. That's like definitely yeah, that's exactly one of the things. I think that it's like that, where it's like there's this perception that like because politics is talking about something important. Politics is important. We can all acknowledge that politics is incredibly important. It affects a huge part of our lives. I mean, it is arguably everything in our lives is political in one way or another. And so the space has that quality, and it does lean itself to people taking themselves as like a creator in a space, as like a YouTuber, or even worse, like as like a tweeter or a poster, that people thinking that like, no, what I am doing is an intrinsic part of the
Also, take a fiber pill with a large glass of water half an hour before eating. Bile releases by volume of content in stomach. Fiber absorbs bile. Takes time for liver to go get bile back. No bile means much lower absorption of fats. Interesting.
of the communist future, or the whatever future, the socialist future, or whatever.
I think
yeah, and
I think that can sometimes be a backlash to how insufferable like apolitical people can be, where they're like, oh, why does everything need to be so political? And you're like, no, things are political, like politics are important. But then I agree, you can go too far in the other direction.
Excuse
where
me?
you can allow your ego to start making you feel like, you know, that you are the next, you know, Karl Marx, or the next, you know, MLK or something, when you're really just a, you know, you only have an audience of, obviously being a YouTuber and being able to speak to like thousands of people is a pretty cool thing, but you still have to also keep that in perspective, that like you're not gonna be changing the world. Like this has to be like an incremental thing. You know?
Speak for yourself, Ryan.
You could be a part of something bigger.
All the pieces are falling into
without,
place
like,
as we speak.
You know, without
it's all about
completely
ego,
misrepresenting it. Yeah, there is a huge ego effect, but I mean, I think also like the internet generally makes it hard for people to like grasp like what does having 1,000 followers mean? What does having 1,000 live viewers mean? You know, what do like it's hard to gauge these things. It's really hard. So a lot of people kind of like I think just wing it, you know? And I think what that can lead to is like on a large scale, it can lead to like just totally unreasonable like what's the right word, projections or yeah, projections of harm, like people like saying, oh well, you said this thing wrong and that's bad politics in my mind, which means because you're this size and you have this much followers or whatever, that means you did a bad thing and you're hurting the future that I'm hoping for. Where in reality, I think it's much more likely to be like most of the things that people do.
I like she's talking about this. One of the things that frustrates me to absolutely no end is when you have people justifying post hoc them being toxic to other people on Twitter, and sometimes the people they're being toxic to deserve it. Like sometimes they're like disingenuous or whatever, but it doesn't matter. They'll post hoc justify that by saying that these are toxic actors, these are bad actors, da 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 da. We need to show no mercy or else the fascists win. It's like, you're not a bloody sociologist. You have no idea what you're doing. You have no idea what the downstream effects of this are going to be. And a lot of people were like this to DemonMama when she was softballing, and she was softballing, honestly, Soul Bunny in that conversation, because she could have like ripped her to shreds. All the material to do so was right there on the table in front of her, and she was being actively disingenuous in that call, I think is fair to say. But DemonMama was smart. She decided to prioritize the potential for positive interaction and growth, and the extended reach of more constructive actors into that space and vice versa back into ours, over getting this one tiny streamer showing her what for, you know? And I think that's the smarter way to go. That's something you can do that's positive as a creator. You're not gonna like, I'm sorry, people seem to have this attitude sometimes where you can actually destroy the enemy verbally, but that's not how that works. They're still there afterwards. All that happens is they block you and they find other friends. And by the way, if those other friends have more friends than your friends do, they win. That's how it works here. So creating lines of access to be able to communicate and to convince and to influence, maybe towards like better standards of behavior and so on and so forth. That's a genuinely positive move. I really dislike this notion. I really dislike when people will make wild conjectures, or wild claims rather, about the harm of allowing certain kinds of discourse or not being reflexively, bombastically harsh against certain types of discourse, even if you do have to fight it. Apropos of nothing. That actually is destructive, and it leads to really toxic and chilled, in the bad way, really toxic spaces where discussion is chilled, and where only people who are already 110% on side can find any home there, which is a problem because that means growth is dead.
Is like not to that scale, and that there are of course specific.
That's true, Shai Hulot. Something else too. And you have to be careful with this, of course. Being generous and allowing people to kind of like feel safe also allows them to make mistakes if they are being toxic or they are being disingenuous. So it works both ways.
Examples, but I feel like people should take more time to actually like hammer out what harm is being alleged here, because a lot of it is just like
exactly, Johnny. I hope I have your name right. It's not about high or low per se. It's about not letting your impulses make you do stupid things. That's 100% what it is. And moreover, not sanctifying your impulses by pretending there's some real politique motivation behind them and you're not just reacting to somebody you dislike strongly, even if it's justified.
Sort of empty. This person did that thing. And, you know, people talk about this with, like, you know, call-out culture in the past and then cancel culture, and that gets weaponized by people who actually do have a huge impact to completely wash their hands of any sort of response.
I only wish DemonMama waited to watch/learn all the context and then went in with the same open approach. Life's too short, guys. I'm sorry. Like, the amount of stuff you would have to wade through, you're talking about an entire day gone. I'm sorry, like, no. Yeah, like if we were talking about like a major news figure, like Anna Kasparian, say, or we're talking about like a politician or some kind of like somebody who's not a video essayist on YouTube, I agree. Somebody who's not a criminal, like the Soul Bunny stuff, I agree. This, no, it's RyanBeard, okay? And RyanBeard may have a big audience, but it's RyanBeard. Let's not go nuts.
Responsibility, but I think a lot of it boils down to the fact that like there's a confounding effect by this all being online politics. It's hard to know exactly how much of an impact is being had by anybody. Which, you know, my answer to that is, of course, like, be more, you know, I urge people constantly to be more, you know, serious and specific when they're making a claim or when they're
I was talking about the Soul Bunny stuff. Same deal, honestly, more so. Soul Bunny's small fry. She has, what, like 8K subscribers? Even if her video got 1 million views, it's like, Soul Bunny is not a fixture. Soul Bunny is not some kind of important node on the map where if you defeat Soul Bunny, you've won a serious victory for the left. It means nothing. Soul Bunny is just a rando. There is no achievement in destroying, as if you could, Soul Bunny in the marketplace of ideas.
You know, saying somebody, you know, X person did this. Okay,
and that's true. Yeah, that's actually a good point, Fox. Especially when you're dealing with people who are furtive. In fact, especially if they're disingenuous, you have to set the bait first, and you have to reel in slowly, or they, you know. Like if DemonMama pushed too hard, or even just asked questions that were too hard, I don't think Soul Bunny would have stayed on for as long as she did. I think she would have just ran, and it would have been the same situation.
What effect did that actually have? Show that. You know, if you're going to take the time to go after somebody, and I think that, you know, to tie this back to what you were saying about, like, maybe the commentary community, and I think this is true about other communities too, where the drama seems so different in nature, or it seems so much, like, less intense. I think part of that is because there is no presumption that, like, oh, okay, so this person is fighting with that person. Oh, you're an idiot. You're an asshole. You called me this. You offended my partner or whatever. And that's that. It is what it is. Whereas in politics spaces, it all gets laundered into some sort of larger political issue. Somebody can't just be an asshole. Somebody can't just be an idiot. Somebody can't have just misspoke. It has to be tied to some greater thing. This person said this thing and has prevented us from getting communism, and workers are going to continue to be exploited because of this. And it's like, okay, is that really true, or do you just think this person's a stupid asshole? And so when talking about, like, all of this, it's like, I find it really important to, like, be specific when we're bringing allegations against somebody else or whatever, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Or extrapolating, like, someone did a bad action, so therefore they're a bad person. Like, you can have someone who has done a bad thing, and you can criticize them for the bad thing without needing to extrapolate that out, that they're, like, a completely harmful force in the space, or that they need to be, like, excommunicated from the space.
Yeah.
And I feel like I see a lot of people on, like, the more debate bro side of things talking about how, like, we shouldn't be...
Soul Bunny was a way for people to launder their opinions. I don't know if that's true. I mean, definitely people fixated on it and promoted it because they had negative attitudes towards the people Soul Bunny covered. But they also went on their own and they said the same things themselves, and even worse. Like, there's that picture of... Jesse Gender retweeted that picture from Django Unchained, implying that Shark was Samuel Jackson's house slave character. Like, I don't think there was any. I don't think they were worried about letting their opinions be seen to be coming directly from them. I think it was just a target of opportunity. Soul Bunny made the video, and a bunch of people who approved of his message just boosted it. And it's as simple as that. I don't think there's a conspiracy.
He's so quick to, like, you know, gatekeep leftism and be like, oh, we need to excommunicate people from the left. But then I do see them then sometimes saying, like, oh, we actually do need to, like, excommunicate these people because these people are making, like, shitty accusations towards us. So then therefore they need to be excommunicated from the left. And it's like, yeah, maybe I think I definitely have felt like I'm someone who feels kind of caught in the middle on things, but then no one likes a fence sitter. No one likes someone who's like saying, "Oh, both sides." You know, like I totally understand that when I say like there are toxic behaviors on both sides, that is like a red flag to especially people in leftist spaces, because that comes across so much like the centrists that are like, "Oh, the left and the right are both equally bad."
My issue is not with Ryan both sidesing it. My issue was with Ryan selectively criticizing one side of it. And it's a side of it, by the way, that I don't have a smooth, easy sailing relationship with. Keffels, for example. I try to get along with Keffels, but it's hard, okay? But, be that as it may, you had Jessie Gender, etc., etc. The particulars elude me right now. It's been a little while. But you had people attacking her on the basis of her struggle with drug addiction, for example. Not just the noodle stuff, that's petty, but on attacking her for being addicted to drugs and needing to go into rehab. That's bad for two reasons. First of all, it's an extremely below-the-belt way to attack somebody generally. But secondly, there are a lot of people in the orbits of all of these creators who struggle with drug addiction. You're attacking them too. Additionally, it's an extremely irresponsible way to go about this. RyanBeard only had criticisms for Keffels in that engagement. This is what I pinned him on. He said basically nothing with respect to those others. My understanding is he does a bit here, and credit to him for that. But the issue is not both sidesing. So, both sidesing is a little bit different from sort of objectively coming in as an outsider and going, okay, let's lay out the claims on the table and let's evaluate this. That's a responsible thing to do if you're an outsider weighing in on a big public contention that's really complicated and messy. What Ryan did is he came in and he didn't stake out a claim on a side, but he joined in on a side in their accusations against the other side, and then tried to characterize himself as being in the middle, or seemed to be doing so in that way. And I think that's disingenuous. I don't want to say that reflects on him here, and you have to remember when you're a larger creator like this and you're embedded in these things, Ryan taking a side comes with a material cost that I, for example, don't incur. Ryan could lose massive connections. Ryan could be ostracized in a big way, depending on whose side he takes. I think nonetheless he should have either stayed out of it entirely, or been more even, or frankly, like made a stronger move to condemn the statements made by people like Jessie Gender, etc. Yeah. Anyways.
Bad or something.
Yeah. And I mean, that's something that I myself have, like, I always try, I'm always worried about.
How can we trust him when he says his name is RyanBeard and he doesn't even have a beard? He does have a beard. You can see a little shadow there. There's a little shadow there. There's a beard. Ryan's got beard going on. It's like, it's like the, it's like the processed cheese product of beards, but it's a beard.
And whenever I do decide to commentate on a drama or involve my opinion on something that doesn't directly affect me, or that only affects me in a tangential way, I always feel like I always feel like I want to be able to, like, urge people to take caution or whatever, without minimizing, like, stuff that really has hurt, like, where people have been hurt. But it is complicated by, like, I don't know, it is complicated by all that we've been talking about so far. And
how much do you think someone has a responsibility if, like, someone in their in-group does...
Hey, Ryan. How you doing?
...something harmful or does something bad in some way? How much do you think that, like, you
Speak of the devil and he shall appear.
Have a responsibility to, like, call that out and criticize it? Because that's something that I've been running into where I'm...
Oh, by the way, Ryan, you said any all here. I've been reflexively saying he. Are you cool with that? Just Double checking.
Like, is it even worth it for me to be giving all my takes on all this leftist info? Like, it is me even voicing my opinions on Twitter about this? Is this even having any sort of positive impact or any sort of like benefit towards the cause?
Sunday beard when I hate beards. It feels so awful, but everybody seems to like it. So my rule is I grow it out for 10 days and it all goes. And so it will be.
Because I see both sides of it where like if you just allow bad behavior to fester in your community and you never like call out, hey, you need to stop doing XYZ,
okay, here we go.
Then that can foster ways that people can be getting hurt in the community. But then if you call it out too much, then it descends into this, thing where we're weakening our own movement because we're constantly fighting each other. Whereas I feel like a lot of times more strong political movements are ones where people aren't always like at each other's throats,
Yeah. So with regard to like how much responsibility do people have to call one another out? I mean, I think that viewers, I know that my chat's probably...
You don't have a preference, Ryan? Okay, thanks. Appreciate it.
Probably going to get really mad at me, but they can suck it, frankly. Viewers have a totally parasocial relationship with every single person in all of these spaces, and they want blood all the time. So they want everyone who has ever even so much as mentioned somebody else or talked to them or had a conversation with them to call out everyone all the time, because they're always looking for more drama, and they always believe that like if you've sat down and talked to somebody on one occasion that you have made you're basically are family now is from their perspective. And so I think that most like chatters are completely deranged with regard to like this conversation about responsibility to call out other people. And that goes especially true, not even just chatters. Twitter posters are insane when it comes to so-called accountability. And I mean, I think that the responsibility to like call out your own becomes higher like when you're like when you engage more in the in like the fight, I don't know, like I often,
if the only thing you're ever doing all day is sitting on Twitter and calling people out.
You miss long-haired Sunday. He's coming back. That takes time, though.
But you're not really doing anything that is actually like advancing the leftist cause,
Yeah.
And your entire day is just being consumed by calling people out, then that might. But it's like, how do we even advance the leftist cause as like, because that's something that I fall into where I'm like, what even is my place in the world as a commentary YouTuber? Like my job is to criticize people. I mean, that's what being a commentary YouTuber is. It's like find something bad someone does and criticize it, and that's like all that I do like for a living.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. Like I at least for the way that I talk about it, I'm always like, my chat can even tell you, I'm super upfront with the fact that like at most I'll call myself an edutainer. I usually call myself an entertainer. I try to be pretty clear about that. I'm a very politically opinionated person. Most of my content is very political in nature. But like, at least
Sunday told me to get a haircut, the bastard. Hey, look, when you got your PhD and you're the nutty professor with the patches on your like 15-year-old jacket, then you can grow your hair out. That's the rule. Also, you have to get out of prison first.
For me, I try to be very aware of my role as a YouTuber. That like at the end of the day, like that's what I have and that's the way that I can impact the world, but it's limited. I will never be in a position to like make policy. That is not like, I mean, maybe if I like was super passionate about that and I spent my life like trying to run for office or something, it's possible. But like, I don't have that type of background. I came from nowhere, middle of nowhere, super rural background, and then I managed to start a YouTube channel.
If I have one ongoing disagreement with DemonMama these days, it's I think she's a victim of a fatalism that I think is, not entirely unrealistic, but also not completely founded either. I am not as pessimistic about the ability of someone in her position, for example, to make a meaningful difference in the real world outside of this space. Although I can understand, especially given the way in which she's been dogpiled historically, that she would have that perception, especially since she has like a community that's pretty robust at this point, that she's maintaining very well. There's not a whole lot of motive to really like quest out from there.
Where people thought it was funny and interesting and had fun, compelling things to say about political topics. So I don't know. I try to keep that in scope and just go, okay, that's what my role is I can prompt people to think harder about a topic. I can hopefully maybe inspire them to have conversations with their friends about those topics. But like, I can't influence directly like what policies get made or whatever. I can do some really cool. But yeah, so it's like, I don't know. I think that like keeping that in scope is really important. But yeah, it's hard. It's a hard question.
I think primarily, yeah, we're just entertainers. Our basic job is to like sit down, talk on camera, entertain people, and then make money from that engagement. I mean, that's the main thing. Hopefully,
here's something very powerful you can do, and I agree. Like content creators, even the very large ones, have a minimal impact. However, they can sort of breach public prejudices on certain issues. They can make certain types of issues less. Like for example, when I was conservative and I was being faced with like trans stuff for the first time in my life, I wasn't seeing like the complex arguments behind the scenes. I wasn't seeing the very real and sincere explanations of the needs of an entire community, and how these are being sort of actively flouted in a very harmful way by like contemptful attitudes towards anybody who looks a little weird according to sort of the mainstream depiction of what the average gendered adult is. That was a very convoluted way of saying when you're coming out of a conservative background, trans people and gay people and so on and so forth all just look like a bunch of colorful weirdos. And one of the things that big creators can do is they can bring you in with their charisma and with your interest in adjacent topics that they cover and go, well, hang on a sec. There's something here you're not considering. There's something here that may be very serious, and so on and so on. And that can be very powerful, although it's an indirect kind of influence. Indirect, but it can like represent something that could be very effective in a long-term way that may be very difficult to track via things like polls and studies and whatnot.
The benefit on top of that is that we can like in some way influence the way people think in some way, whether that's just 10 people get influenced or maybe that's a couple thousand people get influenced. I do think we have the ability to make a difference on some scale, but not on the scale that, like, you were saying that people's egos can get inflated to the point where they think that they're the leaders of the revolution.
Yeah, and I mean, I do think that like sometimes there can be a huge effect. Like, I mean, I don't think that any individual person in like the like to draw from an example on the right, like the alt-right pipeline. I don't think any of those people. I mean, hell, T.J. Kirk did a video. I think it was called like how I accidentally created the anti-SJW genre, and I really like that video. It's a video where he talks about like what his headspace was when he was making that content, and how like at the time it was like his perception of content making was just completely different than his perception now. That it was like a joke space where he could...
Oh yeah, on the negative end of things. So Sirius says, just speaking from my own experience here, but at my uni, there are multiple White Boy Destiny fans who clearly ape at least some of their opinions from him. It does matter. It absolutely does. The campaign of Donald Trump was very much supplemented by his Twitter presence in a massive way. This is primarily where we all talk about this stuff. It politically awakens massive amounts of people, especially if it dips into anything to do with mainstream celebrity culture. J.K. Rowling, massive influence. If for whatever reason some other larger figure can collide with that, cause a little bit of friction with the narrative that some person with mainstream access to the general population is saying, that can be a big deal. That may tip the scale somewhere in a way that may have after effects that might be huge in the long run. You never know.
Like play a character on the internet and do these things, and that he was never thinking about like what types of downstream effects that would have. And
Okay, hold that thought, guys. I need to run to the washroom. We're going to press on. Alright, I'm back. Good, none of you left. I don't have to hunt any of you down.
And you know how he's changed his perspective on that. But I like that video because I think that like a lot of people, I don't think that even the people who do think about that a lot can actually meaningfully predict exactly what their impact is going to be. You never know like exactly when you're going to be a part of a trend or something that goes viral. I think it's good to keep it in mind, but you can never really know that stuff. I mean, hell, sometimes you'll be sitting at home and, you know, being lazy or whatever. You're like, I don't want to stream today. And then you get a notification one of your old videos is blowing up for some reason because some completely unpredictable thing happened. And it's like, so like that kind of thing, you know, complicates stuff. And I don't know. I do think that like, you know, I'm not trying to say that like I don't think that online content creation is impactful. I definitely think it is. And I want to see more people more like lefty creators making stuff because like, oh god, recently there's been this on YouTube Shorts, there's been this trend of like Ben Shapiro and Michael Knowles, but specifically Ben Shapiro and the Daily Wire people, like reacting to with almost no additional commentary, just like comedy specials. And then he'll be like, yeah, you know, it's really true. That's why wokeness is bad. And it'll be like a YouTube short of just like basically stolen content with like, you know, Ben Shapiro sitting there nodding and smiling.
Is that even like, is that even really transformative? Like,
yeah, I mean, good question. The shorts aren't policed as much, it seems, but
yeah.
Even still, like I would love it if there was, you know, if people would land on like a lefty leaning person more, than instead of somebody who's going to slowly work them into a position of being like anti-woke. But these things are really hard to predict. And
that's something that I have thought about with my channel from the get-go, is kind of the idea of trying to make videos that touch on, kind of what is like a trending topic, or like a more something people are talking about in the news, and then kind of like subtly like place those like leftist ideas in there, with the hopes that you can bring kind of a wider audience to think about leftist ideas without like, because if you just put out a blatantly leftist video, that's obviously going to appeal to leftist people, but sometimes I think it's good to make videos that might appeal more towards the center, so that you can like subtly implant those ideas. And I think right-wing people understand this a lot better than left-wing people a lot of times. I think that Ben Shapiro, the left is way better at like making movies and like making good entertainment than the right, but I feel like the right is sometimes better at understanding the way that with like internet culture, like that you should be trying to appeal towards like bringing people over to your side, not always just like having the most insular.
No, I don't think that's the issue. I disagree with this. I think the right has an intrinsic advantage in that people are born into a situation in which certain things are given to them as normal. And the vast majority of people are going to follow a quote-unquote normal track for most of their young lives until they reach adulthood. And they're going to use what they've received in their childhood to understand the world around them in adulthood. And they're going to be confused and frustrated and disturbed and contemptful of people who don't follow that track. And so all the right has to do is highlight, hey, these weirdos and all this stuff that they're throwing in your face that makes you really uncomfortable, that sometimes they're trying to make you do against your will even. They have all of these dishonorable motives in the background. They're sexual perverts. They're thieves. They're looters. They want to steal your hard-earned, the fruit of your labor, etc., etc. That's a very easy sell for a lot of people. You're giving somebody a license to be contemptful of someone who's causing difficulty for you. That's brilliant. I would love some of that. That's fantastic. That makes my life a whole lot easier. It makes dealing with the world a whole lot simpler and a whole lot less psychologically jarring. The issue is not the quality of the entertainment, although the way in which the right falls for like the lowest brand of propaganda does indeed mean that their entertainment is of substantially low value by comparison. The issue is that the left is fighting uphill against a current centuries old. The right is just riding the wave.
Or community where you just kind of circle jerk about topics you already all agree on,
Yeah, I mean, I think that the right has a bit of an advantage in that, like, they can play to a lot of what they do is just playing to pre-existing prejudice. And
because they have the hegemony on their
DM's got it right.
side.
Yeah, they can say, you know what about women? Women be shopping, haha, and then that'll be, that'll get them boosted because a ton of people already have that opinion because they inherited it from their parents or whatever. So I do think there's an advantage on the right on that, but I
Is Destiny calling trans women men now? He did in a recent sports debate. Yeah, I'm not surprised. Here's the one thing. The one thing the anti-SJWs got right. Why are you up there? Get down there. There we go. No, you should be below. There we go. One thing the anti-SJWs got right, and that's the caricature of the sleazy male feminist who is just along for the ride for their own self-aggrandizement and for creepily like sexual access and stuff like that because they buy the bullshit that the left controls the world. And when they realize that it doesn't, you'll notice a whole lot of lefty creators, quote-unquote, are suddenly shifting. And they're not shifting as a result of, I've had these really interesting discussions and it's shifted my viewpoint. Maybe I've had, an uncritical acceptance of a lot of lefty talking points and we need to wind things back a bit. That's not what happens. It's always, there's a monetary advantage in grifting for the right wing. I'm going to dip my toe in and see if I can get away with it. And they do. That's all it is.
I do think that, like, there is great value. I mean, one of the things that I've talked about, like in the past, in these conversations, like I mean,
Did I cover that debate? Oh, was that the Did that? I completely slipped my memory. Was that the vegan gains one?
the argument about the value of debate has been one that has gone back and forth in these spaces since I've been in them. Like people are like, debate is totally useless, and
why?
I don't.
Sorry
think
to
it's
interrupt
totally
you, but like, why do people argue about that so much? It's like, why do we need to keep arguing about like whether video essays or debates are better? It's such a pointless argument.
It is
I don't
pointless,
know.
and
I don't
also
get
it's
it.
kind of funny because it's like, well, if that's true, then why are you arguing about it? You know, if the debate is, if you're arguing, you're just
Also,
wasting
video essays are better. What people have an issue with, Ryan, if you're there, what people have an issue with is not with debates or with video essays. What people have an issue with is people who make video essays engaging in the same type of attack patterns as people who do debates, but then using that format, as well as things like social media blocks and whatnot, in order to not give their opponent the ability, or not give their target, rather, is a more appropriate word, the ability to defend themselves as an equal. That's the issue. In a debate, there are a whole lot of things that make debates uneven and unfair and unreflective of the truth, but there is the bare fact that the person is there and can retort to what you're saying as an equal, at least in terms of their presence on the screen. Maybe, assuming their audio is not fucked or whatever. God, I keep swearing. I'm going to lose all of my money.
your own time by your own beliefs. Like if the debate doesn't matter, then who cares? Just, you know, right? Like your debate on debates won't matter.
Yeah, or that like video essays can sometimes basically be just like a one-way debate where your opponent can't respond. You know.
Yeah, I mean, it is functionally that, and the thing is, like, I think that both of these things can be useful in a similar way. I used to rant about people, like, I used to sort of poke a lot of fun at like the de-radicalization conversation because
or the chips bothering you guys.
I don't know if you know
mute
this,
myself.
but maybe you do. But I grew up in a cult. Like my childhood was spent in a super Christian cult, a very radical one. So like de-radicalization is something that like I experienced firsthand as a lifelong, early in my adulthood, leaving an extreme environment and trying to live a life outside of that environment, and then watching other family members leave that church, that extreme church as well, and find their way and change their views. I don't think that de-radicalization
Exactly. Video essayists are just turn-based debate bros. True.
like correlates with online content, like in any of the ways that people try to talk about it. Like, I don't think that video essays or debates are a huge part of de-radicalization. I think they can be helpful. They can be supplementary. Where I do think they're useful is in inoculating people to manipulate ideas.
Spilled water all over myself.
Making them familiar to potentially.
I swear, I spilled water over myself, guys. I didn't wet myself if I get up.
Or like helping people avoid conspiratorial thinking, teaching people to be like a little more critical and skeptical.
Thank you, Daedalus Media, for the $2 into the swear jar.
These are all things I think that online debates and video essays can both be very valuable in this. But in my experience, at least, in my very intimate experience with these sort of radical spaces, I just don't think that like most. If you're in a radical space, you're never going to see a video outside of your space, and even if you do, you're going to have 100 different internal defenses that will make you dismiss that video. The thing that de-radicalizes people is people in their life, usually life experiences, things that they bump into. And I mean, I can speak from experience that like there were a lot of atheist videos that were of value to me once I had left the church, but when I was still in it, I was not open to that at all. The only thing that was able to get through to me was a really close friend who was willing to sit there and just have hours-long conversations about religion and beliefs with me, and was like, they had fun with that sort of thing. So it was kind of a miracle, and so did I. So we would just go back and forth, and it led me on this very personal level to connect with somebody else and go, oh, wow, they're really taking the time to make me think about this in a different way. Whereas a video, I would just be like, that's propaganda, and you're literally programmed to like avoid that type of thing. So I don't know.
I think I think my take. I think my take on that is I think online content can help with de-radicalization, but I totally agree with you that it's very rare that someone's going to get like fully de-radicalized without some sort of like real life human person in their life that is helping them. Because I was raised in a conservative Christian household. I wasn't in like a cult, and I feel like I did have parents that encouraged critical thinking, and they weren't like, you know, terrible people. So I think that helped me along my journey of that. And my mom has actually recently, I think she was a conservative, but she's recently like a pretty liberal person.
There's a trick though, and this was my experience. I had parents that encouraged critical thinking, and they were great. One of them still is great. One of them's dead. But especially if you're coming from a conservative Christian household, you don't always know what that looks like. And encouraging critical thinking doesn't mean that all of that friction that comes from having a radically different view of the world after your education than your parents does, it doesn't make that go away. It can actually make that really, really... I would dare say it can even exacerbate it, because there may be the perception that they've met you, sort of... Or how to put this? There may be the perception that there's more of a betrayal there, given they've quote-unquote given you freedom to think critically and explore things and whatnot. And you nonetheless ended up going against them on certain key things that they hold as very important.
So it's been cool seeing her go down sort of a de-radicalization path as well. Or not radical, because she's never been radical, but at least a like leftward movement. But I have a bit of a different experience. I think that when I was younger, definitely when I was like, I'd say like early high school, if I would see like an atheist video or a video that had like more left-wing ideas, I'd be much more dismissive over it. But I think it was just like a gradual process that the more and more I looked into these things and watched the videos, I just slowly warmed up to the ideas. And then it's been kind of a gradual process from there for me. You know?
I do think that like for people who aren't like super radicalized, that like the media can have more of an impact in changing their minds, which is like,
that is true. I never was like a full on radicalized. I was just like your average conservative teenager, basically.
And that's one of the things I do think, that like all of this type of content, debate and video essays and all of these things where you're making you're putting forward a specific argument for a topic, or something that you believe in or whatever. I think those things are like I do think they're valuable in that front. I guess.
Has anyone seen RyanBeard's appearance on America's Got Talent? It's pretty adorable. I don't know. Can he really compete with Peter Coffin's ability to kick himself in the balls? I mean, that's the bar is high.
So I was talking about the de-radicalization thing just because I hear it as something that people bring up all the time, and it's one of those things where I'm like, I don't know if these things function.
The problem with Destiny isn't that he's conservative. I don't think he's legitimately conservative. It's the problem with, or that he even has like any real substantial truck with a lot of transphobic or conservative talking points, because he's demonstrated in the past that he knows the arguments that defeat them. I think the problem with Destiny is that he's a greedy mercenary. He doesn't believe any of the stuff that he says, or he doesn't care if he believes it. That's the problem. Like, I'll meet a conservative halfway who actually believes in this stuff, and if they like are open to a discussion, I'll have a discussion with them. And I've had like some really positive conversations in the past on stream before. You can't talk to somebody though, even if they're closer to you ideologically by like several significant degrees, if they're disingenuous, because at no point are you actually getting through to the person that you're talking to. You are basically talking with a chatbot. All of the responses are either predetermined, or they're frantically figuring out how to slot what you're talking about into some predetermined dialogue tree. And it's impossible. You're wasting your time.
And as like de-radicalizers, like I don't know, but I do think that they can impact people and get people to think about things differently. I mean, that's part of one of the reasons why I do content at all, is because I want people to think differently about subjects. I recently did a video about environmentalism, trying to get people to think about environmentalism differently, and to actually think about environmentalism instead of just sort of like climate change as like a political buzzword, like getting people to engage
Think
with, like,
more deeply.
Why do we care so much? What is the thing, and like how do we adopt a mindset that like will help us, and that includes combating climate change as part of a greater set of beliefs and values. So I do think that people's minds can be changed. I know my mind has been changed by videos, and so
I think I would say probably I would say ContraPoints would probably be the person I would point to as like the biggest person that changed me over from like more of like centrist to like leftist. Like I really connected with ContraPoints videos.
Yeah.
I think my biggest issue with debate is just the fact that I wish it worked more like a dialectic, I guess is the word, where like if someone makes a good point in a debate, it's seen as like you're losing if you like are like, oh yeah, that's a good point, I hadn't thought about that.
Yeah.
Because you're basically like ceding ground to the other side in the debate, and that's that person like beating you. Like I wish that debates worked more like conversations, because it feels less like it can sometimes feel less like we're trying to get to the truth of the matter and more like we're trying to like beat the other side,
Well, and I think that is almost impossible to overcome in these spaces, and the reason for that is because it's personalities clashing. It is brands clashing. It is people who are representing their channel and their community, and there's an ego on the line, and there's reputation on the line, and there's money on the line in the big picture. I don't know how you avoid that in YouTube stuff, and that's one of the limitations of the debate, because I think that like when I was engaged in debate a lot, I would tell people specifically like these debates aren't between you and the other person. You are speaking to their audience through your conversation with them, and that is always the case with these conversations.
Ryan, if you're still there, if you want to come on and say hi, be my guest.
And I think that like
and that's why
I promise I won't bite.
I don't think I could do debate, because my brain just doesn't really work that way. When I'm having a conversation with someone, I want it to feel like we can connect on things and not like we're just trying to like speak past each other to influence an audience in that way. That's why I definitely prefer conversations over debates.
Yeah, I think conversations like this can have a connective effect, and they do diffuse the ego a bit. Because there's no longer like a community versus community, brand versus brand thing. I don't know that I know that some people will point to that as like, making the debate itself completely valueless. I don't think it does. I just think that people have to engage.
I don't think it does either.
Yeah, it has to be engaged with a different paradigm. Like, I mean, I
know I've been critical, but I do think debate can serve a purpose of, like if someone makes a really good, there have been times where I watch debates and someone makes a really good point I hadn't thought of, and then that really influences my way of thinking moving forward. Yeah. It's just not something that I would be good at, because my brain doesn't function very well in that way.
Yeah, and it's hard too, because a lot of, when you're engaging in some of these higher stakes debates, sometimes reaching the audience is very difficult. Because the moment the debate ends, that person is going to immediately start reframing things for their audience, and it's hard to predict. You could have a killer debate showing, and really hit all of the good points, but the other person is just better at selling it to their audience afterwards. So they in the after talk,
twisting and manipulating.
Yeah, they just say, well, this is that, and this is the other thing. I mean, I feel like certain people are so good at. I mean, they've primed their audience such to be a demagogue. An example of this is like how a lot of like scientist types, like the Bill Nyes and the Richard Dawkins and all those during the atheism time, they wouldn't argue with certain Christians. Like Ken Ham was a famous example where just nobody would engage with that guy.
Ginger?
And part of the reason is because like his audience was so primed that there was no way that they were ever going to engage, no matter how good you did. he would immediately spin it into a sermon afterwards about how this is proof that like God has sent these people from Satan to try and test us, and it does more harm to even engage them. So there's this whole science to like. There's this whole, I wouldn't even say science. There's an arcane element to deciding what debates are worth having. And sometimes no matter how good you do, even if you're the best debater on the planet, that person might just be able to reframe the narrative. I mean, God knows. I mean, I've had some debates where I was strong, but because in the following week somebody took a clip out of context or whatever and was able to spin a narrative off that it didn't even matter how good I did or how good my argument was or how prepared I was.
There's just the problem of like audience size. Like if you as a small creator are debating someone with hundreds of thousands of followers, a lot of times, like no matter how well you do, their audience is just gonna still say, oh, they were terrible regardless. And that can really fuck with your head because you're like, no, I think I made really good points in that, but I'm still having thousands of people saying that I did like a terrible job. And that can definitely fuck with you.
It absolutely can. It absolutely can, and it can also just damage the impact that your work has. It is very complicated. I've never really understood I've never really understood the roots of the debate bro video beef. Like I understand where it's at now. And to me, it's like very clear that it's like loose associations of people who some of them have real tight connections. Like I'm friends with Xander Hall and Vosh. Like I know them IRL. We've hung out. So like I have a tight connection to those people. But I don't have a tight connection to like other debate streamers that I can even think of. Like there's a ton of other people who do like debates all the time that I have no connection to whatsoever. But people on another side of things might perceive me as having connections to other people because I'm close to. So there's that whole thing I was talking about where there's like the parasocial aspect of like how people are grouped together. And I think that
I feel like I feel like I've like in the past couple months, I've definitely like tweeted about the leftist infighting, and I legitimately was trying to come from a place of like, how can we figure out like what is the issue here of why this keeps happening, and what is like a way that these gaps can be bridged. But then like if you have a conversation with the wrong person, if you slip up and say something in the wrong way, if you endorse one person over another person, if you're seen as like, oh, now you're friends with that person on that side, and I'm like, I'm not friends with that person. I've only talked to him like once in my entire life. I was just trying to like hear out their side of things.
Okay, here's the thing. So people are talking about Destiny and Vosh being friends or whatever, and just general friendships. Someone says Destiny's threshold for friendship is actually very low. Similar thing happened with his Brittany Simon blow up. They didn't hang out enough for her to call him a friend. My threshold for friendship is very high, but that correspondingly, I hang on to my friends very carefully. I pick them out very carefully, I hang on to them very carefully, I defend them, and there's actually like loyalty there. It's actually kind of a condition of even considering somebody a friend at all. If your friends are cheap, if friend means something cheap to you, then it's cheap. And it's cast aside as easily as it is bought.
It can just be very difficult to navigate.
It is. It's arguably impossible to navigate. Like...
And that's kind of the conclusion I'm coming to.
Yeah, where it's like, I mean, in some, you kind of have to take it on a case-by-case basis, and like, because like, the stakes are different in every conflict, and there are a lot of people who will, pressure you to associate in one way. Like I've made it one of the things that I feel like I have a small advantage over maybe other creators in this space is that from the get-go, I have always been extremely blunt, and that nobody if you try to tell me who I'm supposed to associate with in any way, that is going to put a serious blocker on our relationship. If somebody's like wants to come to me and say, hey, this thing, we're mutual friends with this person and I have an issue, can you, what are your thoughts on this, what's your opinion, I'll do that. But the moment that anybody tries to be like, oh, you associate with this person, you're friends with this person, I am just like, stop and consider what you're about to say, because if I feel like you're going to try and tell me from the outside who you want me to associate with, I'll just not associate with you. I don't play well with people who try to tell me that kind of stuff. And so, and I make that clear, which means that, I've had people just straight up cut me off because of associations or presumably because of associations that they don't like. I've had somebody. I had a very specific example, and this was some time ago now, but someone came on my stream specifically to basically yell at me because their community was mad at me because I was friends with Vosh. And that conversation did not go well for them. We ended up having no
Serious, the sociopath is a pejorative thing. You're never going to win that battle. You got to give up on it.
Relationship whatsoever after that, despite us having a relatively friendly relationship, because I said, you don't even understand what you're coming to the table with. You have all of these grievances from your perspective, and that's totally fine. I'm never going to say that you're not allowed to dislike this person, but what you're trying to police is a friendship of mine, and you're trying to do it based on something that I don't agree on.
Okay, but serious, people aren't saying he is diagnosable as a sociopath. What they are saying is that there is an attendant... There is a similar lack of conscience when it comes to other people, the suffering of others, etc., etc. And Destiny has self-described as being essentially aloof to other people's suffering, and he has a well-known sadistic streak. So I think calling him that is fair. The population of sociopaths in the world will probably not care anyway. So there.
The premises of what you're bringing forward. I have I make my So go ahead.
Sorry to interrupt.
No, you're fine.
I had a moment like that kind of recently where I like President Sunday. I think President Sunday
That's
is a smart guy.
What the hell? Hang on. Wait. Why am I being talked about? What happened? What did I do? I wasn't there. You can't prove anything.
At me because their community was mad at me because I was friends with Vosh. And that conversation did not go well for them.
Somebody in chat said, and I quote, meets the diagnostic criteria. Oh, well then in that case, serious, fire away. Destroy, kill them all.
We ended up having no relationship whatsoever after that. Despite us
what
having
on earth is going
relatively friendly relationship, because I said, you don't even understand what you're coming to the table with. You have all of these grievances from your perspective, and that's totally fine. I'm never going to say that you're not allowed to dislike this person, but what you're trying to police is a friendship of mine, and you're trying to do it based on something that I don't agree on the premises of what you're bringing forward. I have I make my So go ahead.
Sorry to interrupt.
No, you're fine.
I had a moment like that kind of recently where I like President Sunday. I think President Sunday is a smart guy who has some good takes on things, but he said that I disgust him because I refused to stop associating with Jesse Gender, and I was like, I feel like that's a bit extreme. But I also see the flip side of it, that if you don't cut out someone, if someone is legitimately, it comes out that they're a horrible abuser, and then you just want to keep being good friends with them, there is the idea that you can become an enabler in that sense.
Oh,
if
absolutely.
You don't
Okay. All right. To be clear, Jesse Gender publicly retweeted a depiction of Shark, or an image of a scene from Django Unchained, characterizing Shark Zero as a house slave. Okay? That's not a minor thing. That's pretty bad. My argument with Ryan had to do with the fact that amidst that taking place, the salient issue was Keffels on the Pickeroo stuff and the noodles thing. Amidst calling Shark Zero a house slave and a sea slur, and going after Keffels for her drug addiction issues. Like, you know, I'm not asking for you to take sides with them. But if you're gonna run interference for the people who are doing that stuff, you know, it's a little bit like, where's your mind at, you know?
Cut off people.
But
Yeah.
again, doesn't that come down to comes down to the whole, like, this needs to be properly, like, in my opinion, like, that has to be, a case has to be built in that case. I mean, like,
You do think that Picker stuff deserved criticism? Absolutely. But it's stale. That's an old thing, and it's not that relevant. A lot of stuff Keffels does deserves criticism. She's a very reckless, often selfish actor, but that's beside the point. That doesn't mean it's just fair game to do whatever you want. And in the present discussion, the pit crew thing, the noodles thing, that wasn't new. What was new were the attacks on Shark and the recent attacks on Keffels for her drug addiction. These are different. I think they're actually at a higher scale, quite significantly so than what Keffels did. Keffels is guilty in that respect of being insensitive. What Jesse Gender and company were doing was a really serious and deep attack on the persons of these people.
I don't exactly have, like, I mean, with multiple people, I have a history of being very blunt with even people that I consider my friends. I will tell them if I think that they are fucking up or if I disagree with their take. You know, I'm a very, very opinionated, and I'm open about that. But I mean, also, like, a lot of times when people come to the table wanting you to disassociate with someone, especially, this is especially true for, like, the horde of babbling chatter people and or Twitter people, they don't ever have anything of substance to bring to you. They have a bunch of grievances that they've spent a lot of time on in their minds, that are based on premises you might not even agree on. I mean, there's so much stuff where I'm just like, I don't agree with your characterization of those events. I'm sorry. You know, if you were somebody who I was, you know, if it was somebody that I knew and they came to me and said, here's the reasons why I think this person is dangerous or whatever, and I could go, okay, I don't really agree with what you're saying there, but you can't do that to a crowd of people on the internet who are all shouting completely different things and who have completely different justifications for why they don't want you to associate with somebody.
Here, I'll help you out, Ryan, okay? This is how you inoculate yourself against criticisms by someone like me. You respond with, I'm going to talk to Jesse Gender off Twitter. I'll mention this. But I'm addressing this issue right now. And I'm allowed to address this issue right now, even if there is this other more pressing issue going on, because that's the one that concerns me at the moment. However, I don't endorse every move these people have made, and I'll criticize these in my own time. That's what you gotta do. Don't deflect. Assert that there is a reason and a plan and a purpose behind what you're doing besides, while acknowledging that there is a thing there worth addressing. And people are off your case and they respect you afterwards. That's how you do it. It's super easy.
It's impossible. Like, and also, like, some people, you're just not going to be, like, I'm not going to be open. I can't make myself open to every single person on the internet, you know? So it's just like, but yeah, like, I think that there are times where, like, like, a line is crossed and it's like, hey, like, this is not cool or whatever. But that's a judgment call, and most of the stuff, let's be 100% real, like 90% of the stuff that people get mad on the internet do not reach the level of, like, serious harm being done. Certain things, I think, like really severe allegations, like frivolous allegations being levied against someone, are like, I think that a case can be made for that, but people don't usually bother. It's 90% rumor mill, gossip. This is the reason why. Okay, well, if you don't agree on the premises, then that person, I don't know. There's too much of an expectation for people to like disown other people for. I ran into this issue even with a conversation I had recently with a creator named Soul Bunny, where I sat down for a conversation and I had my critiques, and we even got in a bit of an argument at times. But a lot of people in chat had this whole like history that would have been impossible.
Here
for
are
me
all
to
the
know.
tweets that Soul Bunny has
Exactly.
made, and yeah.
Even when I saw some of those tweets, I'm like, okay, yeah, some of that is like shit that I don't think I would like. I think that's really shitty, and I think that this was like, I mean, there was even an example of like one part of that conversation where just like I was just told a lie to my face, and I discovered that later. But how the fuck would I have ever been able to know that previous to that conversation when these are things that are happening in the replies of tweets and whatnot? You can't, and then people were mad at me for ever even having the conversation at all because I didn't know the deepest lore of every interaction. So even in a situation where,
Unrelated. Sorry, I'm laughing at chat right now.
I had a lot of opinions in that situation, and I do
Oh,
think
shoot.
there were things
I'm
that
on
went
time.
wrong there. The expectation that's being put on me for having a conversation is, in my opinion, out of
Unattainable.
totally unreasonable. It's completely unreasonable. And people basically treat everything like it's a mortal sin that has been like again, it's that thing. It's you have betrayed the future. We're never going to get communism now.
You have betrayed the future. The gates of communism have shut. Capitalism for all time.
Because you didn't know about these 4 tweets that happened in 16 replies down in a now deleted thread. And it's like, okay, you might be right that whatever was said in there is annoying and shitty and bad, but you need to keep it in scope and you need to keep the harm in mind. And that's one thing that I continually run into in like lefty spaces. I mean, I even yelled about that. There was a video that was made about
God, that's weird, actually. That was in such close proximity to my being mentioned. I didn't even know about that until... Because I saw that clip, the communism thing.
Recently, I got very, very mad about that video because I felt like the entire thing was just built off of invocations of horrible things that were done. It was just like, Keffels did this, and no evidence is actually provided of any that even shows what is being alleged. And I mean...
Yeah,
like
when he showed the wall of the Noodles tweets and said some of the most egregious bigotries to ever reach.
I'm just like, for real. Yeah, you know exactly what I'm talking about. The Foreign Man video. I'm totally...
By the way, there is a legitimate conversation to be had about the noodle stuff. And that conversation is, why is a Noodles book that is being produced by someone who is not, like, who has no, like, concrete attachment to the culture's producing these things, why are they being promoted over people who do? And that's a fair conversation. The appropriate conversation is not, how bad of a person are you individually? A for consuming the noodle book, B for consuming noodles, or C for not caring, because the reaction, this is a hard pill to swallow for people. Just because you think a cause is just doesn't mean that other people have an obligation to give a shit. I'm sorry, it sucks.
The Foreign Man, yeah.
I'm totally
some of the most egregious bigotries of all time. I feel
harm at scale was
Noodles' book was pretty authentic. My understanding is it was pretty authentic too, but the issue is not the authenticity or the faithfulness of the recipes themselves. This all sounds so petty though, because it really is in the grand scheme.
For example, just because I'm perfectly comfortable to be 100% specific with this video. When you're claiming that somebody did harm at scale, you gotta evidence that. And if you don't, then you're going to get made fun of. And I am never going to say anything bad about people making fun of you for making a claim off of the ass. But again, it's just like...
And I also think that can you can kill a potential like valid conversation that can happen when you blow it way out of proportion. Then it's like, okay, well then
Actually, President Sunday, it turns out Pippa Middlehurst went to China and learned how to make noodles. It doesn't matter. That's immaterial. I have no. Pippa Middlehurst didn't do anything wrong either. Okay, that's not the issue. There's a broader systemic thing, but the nature of a systemic issue is that it's not personal. That's kind of the entire point. The reason why we talk about systemic racism is precisely because racism as a meaningful category is not encompassed by this specific person or these specific people having a bigoted attitude towards these specific people at this time.
You know,
you have to think
we
in three
missed out
dimensions.
on some of the, like, we could have had a nuanced conversation about this, but you've said that this is like one of the most egregious bigotries of all time, and it's like, okay, well now how are we going to actually like talk about this? Because I think that the way that Keffels keeps like trolling based on the noodles thing, I feel like I wish that
I agree with that serious. I also don't like how the noodles thing is used. People have run the joke into the ground, and it's kind of just a catch-all to dismiss criticism of Keffels. I think there's a lot of micro celebrity worship going on in this space, and that causes people to be how to put this, completely superficial and obnoxious, and that terminates any further discussion. And like, there are things that the noodles discourse touches on that people are being conditioned to be cynical and aloof towards because of how the noodles issue itself is sort of treated and made into a joke. And to be clear, that's not Keffels' fault. It's also the fault of people who are cynically using that as a way to get to jab at her and to jab at Pippa Middlehurst, or just to get a leg in into popular recognition. It's a mess, guys. The left is not looking good these days.
she would stop like antagonizing with that, but
Sure.
you know, people keep antagonizing her as well about the noodles thing.
Yeah,
but
I
I feel
mean-
like that. I feel like that would be the criticism, is like, you don't need to keep antagonizing the noodles thing over and over. It wouldn't be like this is the most egregious bigotry to ever hit the leftist.
I said
Sphere.
I'm so fucking tired of noodles jokes. I don't ever want to hear a
Yeah.
fucking noodles jokes again because it's not funny to me. And
It's just been
that's
driven
my
into
that was
the
my
ground.
approach.
Yeah, that's-
I'm like, this is why like, but at the same time, I can't entirely blame someone for being like, oh my god, another video came out saying that I did pain at scale, and then shows a bunch of pictures of like noodle conversation, and I just go, this is fucking dumb. You know, like, how stupid can you be? But I don't know. Like, so again, most of it to me just comes off as people peddling really stupid and minor things as way bigger than they are, and not being able to actually like sit down and engage in a back and forth and say, I think you're an idiot because you said this. Well, I think you're an idiot because of this, and then call it good. You know, fucking have it out and whatever. Instead, it becomes like, you know, this person is filling our spaces with X thing, when there are people who do that, by the way. I 100% agree that, like, there are examples of people doing really harmful shit. We have had predators infiltrate leftist spaces in the past, and I've been witness to that. I've been witness to them being ousted from the space almost unilaterally because that evidence came to light. And I think that we should reserve that energy for cases where the evidence is good.
Could someone remind me who this is referring to? I feel like I know sort of who that is, but who's DemonMama referring to here?
But I just don't know. I don't know how. I don't know how to convince people to just like take a step or two or maybe five back, and maybe dial down the intensity just that much. When at the end of the day, one of the big problems is that in a hyper spectacle space of YouTube generally, anything big sells. You know.
We are entering into the hyper spectacle space where anything sells. Was anything big sells? Hang on. What was that?
Spaces in the past, and I've been witness to that. I've been witness to them being ousted from the space almost unilaterally because that evidence came to light. And I think that we should reserve that energy for cases where the evidence is good. That but I just don't know. I don't know how. I don't know how to convince people to just like take a step or two or maybe 5 back, and maybe dial down the intensity just that much. When at the end of the day, one of the big problems is that in a hyper spectacle space of YouTube generally, anything big sells. We
are entering into the hyper spectacle space where anything big sells.
You know, a video that says, I have a problem with you is not going to get as many clicks as they fucked my cat. You know what I mean? Like, it's just like...
No, I'm not going to do it.
It's this problem. And I'm like, I want people to do better, and I want people to see how it, like, negatively impacts the space. But in order for that to happen... I feel like there has to be like
they have to like set aside this big profit incentive that it's like, because I see from their I come from a bit of a privileged perspective where like my career is not dependent on like making money off
Moppin. Maybe no, Moppin isn't like a major leftist figure. I think it was somebody who's more mainstream.
Of talking about leftist infighting. Like the videos that I make, I just talk about like Colleen Ballinger or whatever is like the latest, thing. Kind of choose people to talk about. But I totally understand, like, if you're in the position where you're like, okay, I could make a video talking about like direct action and get 100 views, or I could make a video attacking X leftist creator and get 10,000 views. Like, I'm obviously going to choose. And I feel like that is, I mean, it's a symptom of capitalism. I feel like there's like a big capitalist incentive that is, ironically, like, can cause poisoning within the leftist spaces,
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. Like, I think that like monetary incentive, that monetary incentive affects so much of what's going on in these spaces. I just wish people would realize that it's over peanuts. That people like that you're really not making that much more by constantly milking drama, and you're not actually, and it doesn't last. That's one of the things that I've learned a ton from. I'm still in this space after 3 years of streaming and being the subject, we'll just say, of controversy, to be fair to everyone involved.
You've been very shit on multiple times.
Yeah,
for sure.
there have been some ridiculous things levied against me, and I'm still here, and I'm still making stuff. And I've seen communities blow up around me. I've seen so many content creators come and go. I've seen so many people who felt like it was like they needed to make the drama content to get the clicks, and it didn't actually do anything to save their channel because it doesn't last. It doesn't stick around forever. People stop getting mad about it. They stop caring about it. They get burnt out on being mad all the time. They don't become attached to you as a creator or your channel for what it has to offer. They're just there for the drama. And I wish more people would realize this. And maybe I'm banging this drum too much, but like, I want people to like...
Well, I think they do, but the catch is, if you have no personality or you have no talent or you don't really know a whole lot about anything particular, and you can get 100 to 300 viewers talking about which of Destiny's sex partners he's parading around on stream to squeeze cash out of their insanity, you're going to repeat that. And yeah, maybe it's an exhausting treadmill that you can never get off until you burn yourself out. But, beats working at Walmart.
Recognize that, like, there's nothing wrong with having a legitimate grievance with somebody. There's nothing wrong with, calling out somebody who's behaving egregiously in a space when they're doing that. But it hurts everyone, every single person even remotely attached to any of these spaces, to turn it into a toxic cesspit where every single...
President Sunday, did we finish with Bugagardis? No, we didn't. We're going to go back to that soon. I am doing my natural law critique video, and we're on the anti-teleology arc, but it's a lot of work. I'm reading a lot in the background. Actually, quick break. These are the books I'm reading, and they're all super interesting. I'm not going to spend too much time describing them, but Oyama, Susan Oyama, I've been diving into her. Specifically here, let me go bigger. Better, faster, stronger. Okay, let's get the chest off the screen. I'm reading Evolution's Eye, a systems view of the biology-culture divide by Susan Ayama. It's a fantastic cover as well. I'm almost done The Ontogeny of Information, also by Ayama. Super interesting. This week I started Arthur Kessler's Ghost in the Machine. This is not a particularly nice cover in my opinion, and it's very, very old, but it does the job. I am reviewing some of Charles Sanders' Peirce with respect to the Nomos of Dune, which will be coming out at some point. I'm cracking into Henry Bergson's essay Time and Free Will. And I will also be reviewing some Hegel for that too. There's a lot going on. And of course, I'm slowly crawling through Spinoza in the background. I'm reading a lot, okay? And by the way, the hardest part of it was reading the bloody, was rereading all of the sources on natural law and whatnot. Aristotle can be fascinating. I find Thomas Aquinas to be an absolute bore. Can't stand him. Oh my god. Which pains me, because the connection to Deus Ex, because that's Bob Page's favorite philosopher, makes me want to find it interesting at the very least, even if I disagree with everything. It is actually interesting. It is worth going through. He's just wrong about everything, and you can't really use him positively. And the problem with the way... I'm going to start rambling a little bit, but the problem with the way in which universities introduce material is that typically they'll have survey courses of archaic stuff first. So you're reading the archaic stuff, thinking you're getting a chronological exposure to the material, but people fall off halfway through, or they specialize halfway through, and so everybody's read Aristotle, everybody's read Plato, more and more people have read Aquinas or Augustine, like in political science or something. Maybe you read Thucydides, you read a lot of ancient Greeks, you read a lot of medievals, you found it all super interesting, and then almost nobody's actually read Kant, except they'll know that it's considered sort of like cool and hip to dismiss Kant. And nobody's read like a bunch of moderns. People kind of slot themselves in, and they have they have a glowing image in their head of what these ancient ones were, and they're not even aware that these ancient authors that they're reading, or maybe they're aware of it sort of in a loose sense, but it's not really, they're not processing it with the level of significance that it deserves, that these ancient texts are being contextualized and indeed translated by people who are modern. So you're not actually reading an ancient text. You're reading a translation in terms that somebody has selected on the basis of ideological positions they may not even understand. And if you read anything on, like, for example, the history of translation of Aristotle, this is rife. Like the politeia called politeia, that's a sentence from Aristotle's Politics, completely lost in most modern translations. Why? Because they want to fix on something like the mixed regime. But you lose precisely what he's doing. He's talking about the actual form of the politeia itself, that form of the political community that is most approximate to its actual nature as a specifically political community. But I digress. Beard.
Action is like measured on the scale of did it prevent communism or not. It ruins it. It makes it no fun. It becomes a no fun allowed zone. It means everybody's always looking over their shoulder. It means that actual grievances get totally buried as well, because, you know, people can't actually sit down and have a conversation about real things that went wrong or whatever. And also it means nobody wants to do anything with each other. So there's no nobody fucking making any stuff anymore. And, like, I don't know, like, God, I think of there's so many situations of like just people firing so hard that it's like I can't tell. Like, there are people I would never make content with again because of how ridiculously hard they went against me over something so stupid. Because I'm like, I'm never gonna sit down and make a content with somebody who thought it was appropriate to write like a manifesto on me or something like that. You know, that's never gonna happen. I'm just fuck that.
Sure.
And I have
I think
to, you know,
I think people can overestimate the harm of like someone's actions, but then they can also sometimes on the other side overestimate the harm of like the people calling out the actions in like an imprecise way.
True. Yeah, I think that's true as well. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's what I see happening is there will be someone who makes a statement that I agree is not great, but then people will be like, oh, this is the worst person to ever. And then it's like that's where, and then once those people call that person the worst person ever, then the people on the other side are like, okay, see, these people actually are as bad as we think they are. And then that's how the spiral keeps going, you know?
And I don't know what the answer is besides just like, I don't know, just keep trucking. And, you know, I have made there was a time where I was much more willing to engage in conversations that would be considered drama. And when I had, you know, a lower threshold for what I was willing to talk about, like when people were beefing or whatever. And I've changed my approach to that a lot over the years. And I tend to, if I touch drama, I tend to approach it with a very specific goal in mind, and then call it good. And that's been a big change for me, and I think it's been a better change because I have a whole bunch of other stuff that I do that people are super engaged with and super interested in, and they stick around for it. I have this, like, you know, so I don't know. So like that, to me, I'm just like, wow, like once you decouple yourself, once you're able to just step back and say, like, I'm not gonna, I don't feel the need to comment on all of these conflicts. I'm gonna only step in when I feel like I can really add something, or when I can hopefully try and direct things in a meaningful direction. I do think that that can be relieving, and I think that it can be good for the community as a whole, because there's a lot of stuff that just gets, I don't know, they're just like, yeah.
Yeah, but what's happened with me is I try to do that thing that you're talking about, where you try and come in and give like maybe a more constructive, nuanced opinion on it, but then people are like, "Oh, shut up, fence-sitting centrist! Like no one wants to hear your take about how both sides are bad." And I agree that it can be frustrating to have someone like criticizing both sides at the same time, because a lot of times people who are doing that because they're trying to be like a grifter who doesn't, you know, is spineless and doesn't want to piss off anyone so that they can like make everyone happy. And I will admit I am a bit of a people pleaser. That is an issue with me where I don't like people not liking me. I am a profoundly self-conscious person who wants people to like me, and I can sometimes that can sometimes sway me in different directions.
Well, here's a secret, Ryan. You take a hard stance on things, and you like hold fast, and you actually have like a sense of justice or whatever, and people can rely on you to be both a true friend and a true enemy. A lot of people won't like you, but a lot of people will love you. That's worth thinking about. The last thing you want, if you want people to like you, is to be held in contempt, because they can't rely on you being full-bloodedly on their side or on the enemy's side. You're an unknown quantity that must always be held in suspicion, because what determines where you fall is a mysterious calculus based on your perceived self-interest. There's value in being more solid.
I am like, okay, I'm just going to go along with this. And that's something that I'm trying to like make sure that I am stronger on. But at the same time, it does suck to feel misrepresented when you are coming at it from a perspective of really trying to be constructive. Because like I said, me commenting on all the leftist infighting, it doesn't benefit me monetarily whatsoever. I think every time I talk about this stuff, I end up like losing followers from people on both sides, because they're like, here's Ryan again with another like both sides are bad take. But it's like, I don't know. I just like, I really want the online left to get along, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I've completely given up on the goal of the like.
You don't want your worth to be wide as an ocean but shallow as a puddle? I mean, in terms of worth, no, but in terms of political reach, there is merit in what Ryan's doing. Ryan has a much larger audience than many of us combined, and there's a reason for this. And, you know, maybe wide as an ocean but shallow as a puddle sounds like a bad deal, but have you seen a tsunami? Those aren't deep, but they hit hard.
Online left getting along, because for a couple of reasons that I can outline, you know, which is I don't know. I think the online left is so nebulous as to be. There's no, for most of the people in the online left, there's no actual ties between them.
I think the online left has its identity is entirely oriented around not being right wing. It's not even the left; it's the anti-right. There's nothing in common between them. There are friendships between people with common values, but that is not encapsulated or specified by left wing. That's completely different. I'm going to run to the washroom again. We're probably going to wrap up soon. This is getting very boring, I'm not going to lie. But I will say this. Actually, you know what? I think... is there something interesting coming up? Oh, God, this is so long. DemonMama, this is so long. It goes for like an hour. I think, honestly, I think I'm probably going to wrap it up here. Just because, like, the pollen's really getting to me, and I'm super tired. I need to run to the washroom again. So I guess closing thoughts... I'll say this. I have criticisms for RyanBeard, heavy ones, even in this conversation. I don't have bad blood towards him, and I think what's really important to keep in mind here is that RyanBeard engaging in the way that he has in this conversation, that's a peace offering, okay? Given the nature of my conversation with him going, I like President Sunday, he's a smart guy, that's a... I'm not particularly susceptible to flattery, but I understand the attempt to retroactively go, or maybe not retroactively, but after a belated period go, you're saying something, you know? I think what DemonMama is doing is smart. Whether it bears fruit is anyone's guess, but I don't see how continuing to hammer these people in the way that has been going on will yield anything positive. In worst case scenario, we just go back to what we were doing before, right? So I see no loss in this whatsoever. I think attempting to build these bridges and open these doors is not just crucial to developing more positive dialogue with these people, but with how sterile the left space has become in the last year, I think it's probably essential. We need to have flow. We need to have people with different perspectives and opinions and positions actually interfacing with each other, because right now there is trans YouTube, which is people talk about trans issues, and they're an isolated little island that barely has any contact with the outside world. There is socialist, environmental, all these spaces that have no interaction with other spaces. We have like the politics streamers with their own like little audiences. Nobody's interacting, nobody's collaborating. And that's fundamentally the primary advantage that the right wing has. They're very good at networking and bridge building and coalition building for dishonorable reasons. Namely, they're willing to throw all their principles to the wind to scrape up the lowest common denominator. But that's an advantage is an advantage. They have the numbers on us. So I think that this move by DemonMama is very savvy, and I'm optimistic, cautiously, about where this goes in the future. Let's figure out where I'm sending you. On the subject of collaboration. I see Lucy is going. I will send you there. Have a good night, everyone. Remember, if you like what I do, like the stream and share the stream. It helps me out tremendously. I have a Patreon linked in the description. I rely on that to make rent, which frees me up to do this more and more and more and more. So, yeah. Cheerio.